we need to like radically lower the barrier of entry for building protocols and dApps. If we get that number up, then everything else can follow. And if you don't get that number up, then like all of the vision of like what blockchains can do is basically pointless, because developers basically start this like virtuous cycle. They build the apps get users get money in the ecosystem, and like the flywheel spins.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Edge Podcast. I'm DeFi Dad from Fourth Revolution Capital, and I'm here with my friend and co-host from 4C Nomadic. Today's show is a shorter episode we do called Quick Hits, where we spotlight new DeFi and Web3 projects. In this episode, we'll cover a new developer tool live in public beta that's sure to be a hit with L2 developers called Atlas. Atlas is self-described as, quote, the fastest way to build on Ethereum. While L2s are growing quickly, a bottleneck for new development of protocols and dApps can be tooling to support those developers. Atlas enables developers to deploy on any L2 in just a few clicks, including Arbitrum, Optimism, Scroll, Polygon, ZK Sync Era, and more. We'll also cover their popular ChatGPT-like plugin that allows developers to instantly generate smart contracts from scratch with their integrated Solidity AI without any download or setup. But before we do, just a quick word from our sponsors who make the Edge Podcast possible.
Welcome to Mantle Network Mainnet. Mantle Network, the flagship product of Mantle ecosystem, is a high-performance Ethereum Layer 2 network that brings scalability, security, and affordability to the forefront under a modular design. We're constantly growing and expanding. Since the launch of Testnet, Mantle Network has enabled a significant gas fee reduction for L2 transactions by up to 70% by adopting EigenDA technology. We also seamlessly integrated fraud proofs and concluded external audits on the codebase. Together with its extensive ecosystem partners and hundreds of thousands of builders and community members, Mantle, powered by its native token, MNT, is committed to enabling the mass adoption of decentralized and token-governed technologies. You can now explore a multitude of projects already deployed on Mantle Network, from gaming to DeFi and beyond. Call in Web3 entrepreneurs to accelerate their project growth with the Mantle Grants program. The time is now. Join us to be part of the decentralized revolution.
Whether you're a trader, farmer, analyst, or newbie, you can trade smart with KYBERSWAP, the OG decentralized exchange and aggregator on 13 chains. Swap at the best rates, farm with real yields, set limit orders, use their proprietary trading and AI tools with the best UX in DeFi, securely and permissionlessly. Get better rates, better opportunities, better alpha, and a better trading experience. Trade smart now at KYBERSWAP.com.
Hey everyone, my name is Kaito. I'm a co-founder at Utopia Labs, and today we're really excited to be announcing and launching a feature called USDC bank transfers. We're basically allowing for any company based anywhere in the world to be able to send USDC to any US bank account, whether that US bank account is a US citizen or a person who might have something as simple as a Wise account. If we zoom out since a year ago, there's been a chokehold on kind of the interoperability and seamlessness between traditional rails and crypto rails. We put a lot of time and effort into this to be able to provide a smooth end experience for you as a consumer or as a company using crypto and using traditional financial rails.
It all started so simply with CryptoKitties and Maker on Ethereum, but quickly became complex with more applications and many chains. Today, everyone agrees UX issues are the biggest blocker standing in the way of crypto adoption. Introducing AVOCADO. Multi-chain UX redesigned from the ground up. The first wallet to abstract networks, accounts, and gas. One gas tank to pay transaction fees on all chains in USDC. And native access to INSTADAPP's powerful, custom DeFi strategies. AVOCADO, one wallet to rule all chains.
At Origin Protocol, DeFi is an art form. Origin invented the yield-bearing stablecoin in 2020 with OUSD, delivering boosted stablecoin yield with unparalleled usability, no lockups, no wastage, no guesswork. Using OUSD's battle-tested code, Origin launched OETH. OETH is a liquid staking yield aggregator backed by ETH and LSTs. Swap for OETH with Rocket Pool's RETH, Lido's Steth, Frax's FRXETH, or ETH to earn top yield on Ether, with a 30-day trailing APY more than twice that of Steph. With Origin's best-in-class yield strategies, OETH holders enjoy the best ETH yield in DeFi. Deposit any supported LST, mint OETH, and earn automatically with yield delivered directly to your wallet. To learn more about OETH, go to oeth.com. Adam, have I ever told you about my first-time home buying experience? This was years ago when my wife and I lived in the Bay Area. Prices for single-family homes were going up, and we were just trying to scrape together whatever we could for a down payment. But it wasn't long before we realized we had been priced out of buying in our own neighborhood. Now, the most frustrating part of this story is that we knew prices were going up, and yet there was nothing we could do to benefit from it. If I could have been long real estate prices in my region, then at least we could have participated in the market upside with even a lesser amount of money to invest. So when I stumbled upon PARCL, I immediately recognized a solution for many of us who have been locked out of real estate markets and looking for an alternative way to get exposure. PARCL is a decentralized perps AMM where I can long or short real estate synthetics based on the median price per square foot in some of the most sought-after cities in the world, meaning I can get exposure to real estate markets like Boston, Washington, D.C., and Chicago. For example, if I had PARCL years ago and I was bullish on real estate prices in San Francisco, I could have longed PARCL's San Francisco index with a minimum of 1 USDC. Or if I had just bought a home and wanted to hedge against the price of our home crashing, I could have shorted the same real estate index. To learn more about PARCL, go to parcl.cc/edge. All right, in just a moment, we'll introduce Samee Siddiqui, the founder and CEO of Atlas. Samee is a software engineer and dApp developer, having previously worked on multiple startups in Web3, which ultimately inspired him to build Atlas, a story that we'll talk all about in the next few minutes. So let's kick it off. Samee, welcome to the Edge podcast. How are you doing?
Hey guys, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
So, Samee, why don't we just start with the easy stuff? Let's talk about your background. How did you end up in crypto or Web3?
So I was an engineer just working in Silicon Valley. I worked at a couple of startups. And I think philosophically, the thing that got me excited was I felt like there wasn't a lot of companies like building important things anymore. And that there was kind of stagnation. And like I wanted to join an industry that was actually changing rapidly and making impact in the world. After like diving deeper into the space, you kind of realize that this is the only space that absolutely allows you to like reprogram the world in ways that you think are interesting. So like the banking infrastructure, the way governments work, the way companies work, all these things you kind of take for granted. But in crypto, you actually learn that, hey, all of these things like don't have to work this way. Like governments and companies and banks don't have to work this way. You can actually reprogram how all of these things work because this is like a new tool for coordination. So yeah, I got excited about that. That's like, it's a very rare opportunity where this like new computing platform comes out in your lifetime and that it can like fundamentally reorganize society. So it seemed like I would be really silly to not join in on this and build something in the space.
Samee, the next question that I wanted to kind of talk through was more about the state of tooling for developers that are working in Web3. But I feel like actually the more natural way to talk through that is, can you tell your story about, the founding of Atlas? Because obviously there was sort of like an epiphany that you had as you were working on dApps that, hey, I should build Atlas because I need this as a developer. So anyways, if you could tell us that story.
Yeah, for sure. I think also useful context here is that I'm not just like a random developer. So my entire career, I've basically been building developer tools actually in the Web 2 world. I started my career at the company Expo. They used to build like JavaScript tooling for making like iPhone and Android apps. I went to Salesforce. I was building tooling for like monitoring all of their infrastructure systems. And then I went to Flexport and I was working on like an API platform for automating their shipment process. So I was basically working on like products for developers at all these companies. And then when I moved into Web3, I was building a couple of products like a social network, a game, things like this. And I realized that all of these, like when you build something for yourself in the Web2 world, you use a lot of tools off the shelf. You might use something like AWS, or you might use some other tooling. In Web3, this is not really the case. And basically everything you have to build from scratch. There's like very, very few things you can actually take off the shelf. And the things that you can take off the shelf are usually very old and very difficult to use tools. And so we kind of realized, hey, this is pretty annoying. And we started working on this infrastructure product, which is like roll-ups as a service. So it would kind of be like similar to how if you want to make a website or web server, you would use a cloud infrastructure provider like AWS, and you could like spin up your own blockchain. But we had the same problem that every layer 2 and every blockchain has right now, which is that it's cool if you have infrastructure, but there's actually basically no blockchain developers in the entire world right now. There's only like a few thousand. There's about 30,000 full-time blockchain developers in the whole world. And so what happened is like all of these chains, like Ethereum, ZK, Polygon, Scroll, like every chain you ever heard of, they're all fighting over these 30,000 developers. And so there's certainly not enough developers to go around to build on all these chains. And so we were basically facing the same problem as like a roll-up product where like this is going to be important at some point, but there's not enough developers that exist. So it actually seemed like, okay, the core problem here is like we need to just increase this top line number of how many developers are building things in blockchain. And then if we get that number up, then everything else can follow. And if you don't get that number up, then like all of the vision of like what blockchains can do is basically pointless because developers basically start this like virtuous cycle. They build the apps get users get money in the ecosystem, and like the flywheel spins. So that's kind of like the meta thought process. So we basically, our goal is how we need to like radically lower the barrier of entry for building protocols and dApps. So we built this like all-in-one IDE where you can say, hey, write me this smart contract that like walks you through with AI and iterate on it, and then press the button and deploy. And so that was kind of the original goal, is like, how can we increase the number of developers and how can we make it as easy as possible to actually start building?
So if I'm a developer on ZK Sync Era or Polygon or Arbitrum, is the issue more of a lack of tooling, or is it a limitation of options?
I mean, their tools exist, but they're basically just very rudimentary, and they're hard to use, they're rudimentary, and then they still require you to learn a lot of deep domain knowledge that you as a new developer might not find relevant, or might just not be even that relevant. It might just be you're learning some random things about this specific tool. The main tools people use right now for building dApps or protocols are Hardhat, Foundry, and Remix. Hardhat is the number one tool. It's like a JavaScript command line tool. Foundry is growing in popularity. It's powerful, but it's like a Rust CLI tool and it's kind of hard to use. And then Remix is this like Ethereum foundation in browser IDE. Most people write their first smart contract in this, but then they like quickly graduate because it has very limited power. So you kind of have these two ends of the spectrum where you have like easier to use, but not very powerful, and then powerful, but very difficult to use. And so we just tried to make like, how can you make it easy to use, but also have like all the powerful features of these powerful tools.
Samee, I love a few things that you mentioned earlier just on growing the amount of developers in the space, but then also making it easier for them to develop and then build their dApps easier and deploy them on all these L2s. I think even myself, I think I've underestimated kind of the power and the need for this tooling. And it seems like there's just been a big disconnect in the space. On that note, like, why don't we dive into the Atlas product suite and you can kind of go over what you've been building?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's basically like I don't know if you guys have ever used an IDE, but it's kind of an all-in-one suite where I can go from I have an idea to building and deploying this dApp on any network all in one tool. So it's basically like I can say, hey, write me this contract. I can test it out and then I can deploy it. If you want, I can actually give you a quick demo on the website right now.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Cool. So here we are at the Atlas page. You can click create to create a new project, or you can import something from a template from GitHub. Let's just call this Hello World project. We have a couple of templates, as I said, or you can get something from GitHub and you can create it. And so now you just get dropped into this IDE. This is I don't know if you guys have read Solidity code, but this is basically like a hello world contract that just increments this stored integer and on this contract. So just to kind of give an idea of how easy this is to use, all we have to do to actually start interacting with this contract now is hit run. And this actually deploys to like a virtual blockchain that's running in your browser. And you can now actually call the functions on this contract, and you can see this number increments, and we can like basically test this contract in real time. So this speeds up your development and iteration loop a lot when you're building something, because you could actually see what is actually happening when I call these functions, and is it doing what I think it's going to be doing. So I think that by itself is pretty cool. But where it really gets exciting is using Copilot. So the flow of what it means to actually develop has kind of changed now. We are going to be building things first with AI and then kind of just tuning it based on what it spits out. So let's ask it to write me a decentralized Twitter. Have a function that gets all tweets for a user and lets me post a tweet. So we can basically use this to generate a lot of code that otherwise we'd have to write from scratch. And that's really powerful now because we can iterate much, much faster, right? 90% of the code that would have been boilerplate before is written for you. And I can use my time as a Solidity developer now on just really making sure that my custom logic is sound and that I understand every line of code that's happening here.
Can I just ask a quick question here? So this is essentially like prompt to code. This is almost like a ChatGPT like, but for a Solidity dev, like a little companion helping you write Solidity. Is that kind of correct?
Yeah, exactly. And the cool thing here is like, this has context of what you're doing. So it knows about your project and it knows about this contract that's got written. So if you want to say like, hey, can you write me a test for this contract? Or, hey, can you analyze this contract for security vulnerabilities? Or, hey, I like this contract, but can you add this function to do this? It knows about all these things, and you can like easily add back and forth between the two windows. So I think that's what's pretty cool about it.
That's super cool. So as far as like, how did you train this Copilot? Like, is this like some sort of off-the-shelf API, or is this like proprietary? Is this something that you've trained on the Atlas side of things? Like, have you trained this AI on Solidity code, or where did this come from?
So it turns out GPT-4 is pretty good at Solidity by default. You can do some clever prompt engineering to pass in like whatever relevant context you want / tell it to do Solidity things. But in general, like the longer term plan here is like, this should clearly be a custom model. And Solidity is actually very well designed for making a custom LLM because 1, all the code is open source. 2, what is high quality code versus what has been hacked, etc. And so we're planning on actually training a custom model with not just Solidity code, but we now have a bunch of data of these chats that people are doing. And this is how they actually fine tune things like ChatGPT, where they use custom data set in addition to actual real people interacting with a chat agent to make like a new chatbot.
Samee, have you gotten any feedback on any of this that you can share so far with, you've got a public beta that's live. So any sort of feedback to highlight from developers who are using this?
Yeah, the number one thing by far is just like the speed of iteration and the speed of getting something out the door is like night and day difference between any other product on the market. So like you guys saw how simple it is. I can go through deploying to a live network. If you want to see that, we can do it. But like you can literally have an idea and deploy to Ethereum mainnet in like 1 minute. It's like not exaggeration at all. So that's like just a huge delta. I think as people are starting to build more complex apps, which we're starting to see now, it's less of like, oh, I'm shipping my thing to mainnet in 1 minute. And it's more that hey, I'm able to iterate much more quickly on the design of my app, or what functions I want, or what contracts I have, and I can understand the code and like change it much more quickly, because I basically have this agent that I can go back and forth with. And so the majority of time is really spent on what is my unique like value add I'm adding to this protocol versus, hey, what is the syntax of Solidity? How can is this thing going to run properly? Like you're focusing much more on like the high order bits there.
What I'm hearing here, Samee, is DeFi Dad and I might have a chance to become Solidity devs once and for all. I still don't know if this would even help us get there. We might even need a little more heavy lifting, but
I mean, you guys are there now. I mean, it's literally a tool. Like we've lowered the barrier of entry that anyone now can become a developer, right? That's actually the end goal, is that you shouldn't need to like understand a lot of random syntax. In the ideal world, like Solidity is actually, again, there's a bunch of like very audited code and that's battle tested. So for a lot of applications in the future, you should just be able to say, hey, I want this in like plain English, and it should be able to pull very like battle tested audited code and build whatever you want for you. So yeah, I think it's like you guys should be able to become developers, and you already can. I mean, if you go to the website, you can deploy a lot of simple things already.
ETHER.FI is a fundamentally new kind of staking protocol for Ethereum. ETHER.FI is the only protocol that allows stakers to retain control of their keys while delegating staking, and allows others to build services on top of delegated staking infrastructure. What makes ETHER.FI different? ETHER.FI is the only staking protocol where stakers retain control of their keys, which means that even if the protocol gets attacked, or if the node operators get in trouble, you can always get your Ether back. ETHER.FI introduces a new fun way to stake called EtherFan, where you get rewarded the longer you stake. When you stake your Ether with ETHER.FI, you mint a provably rare NFT that you can use to earn membership points and get boosted staking rewards. Revenue from these services is shared between stakers and operators, which further boosts your staking rewards and node operator revenues. To learn more, go to Ether.fi and Ether.fan.
okay. So I know you say it speeds things up, but are you able to quantify that at all? Like, obviously there's more complex things you can do, and I know it helps for iterations, but like, if you were to say like, is this like a 5x increase? Is this like a 10x? Like,
I think one depends on what you're building, because there's with any like creator tooling that uses AI to like augment your ability, there's like this long tail of use cases where if you're making very, very custom, like low level code, for example, it becomes like increasingly not that useful. And then if you're making like things that a lot of people have done, it's like really, really useful. And then there's like this middle that you like gradually drop off depending on how custom your use case is. So I would say for probably 50% of people, what they're making is like fairly standard, if not more. This is like a 99% increase if you're talking about like the first time you ever use something, because you literally don't need to know anything about Solidity or download anything. Don't even understand how a command line works. You literally go to the website and can deploy anywhere and automatically verifies everything. It's like a very magical experience. So that's like by far away, like I would say 90 to 99%. My first smart contract, it took me like many, many hours to deploy. So if you compare 1 minute to many hours, it's like, again, night and day difference. If you're trying to build like some very highly optimized Solidity code where you need to like use assembly or something like this is going to be pretty, I mean, the best thing it can do is basically maybe analyze the code for you, but it's not going to be very good at, like if you say, hey, generate me assembly to do this thing, it's not going to be like nearly as good as probably just someone who's like a low level protocol developer. But over time, this is not going to be increasingly not true, right? As there's more and more code written in Solidity for whatever the use case is, the data set increases, and that there's more of that code, basically more of the use cases move towards this, like it has been done before, AI model can help generate it, as opposed to this is novel code that no one's ever written before.
And so obviously this helps in the creation aspect of developing in Solidity, but how do you foresee this working in kind of like the audit aspect? I mean, I guess you wouldn't want this to be like your end all be all check, but I'd imagine like this is super helpful for picking up little errors and maybe things like that.
Yeah, no, auditing right now is also kind of a huge headache, right? If you're building a protocol that handles any real money, you have to go get a bunch of independent auditors, one which takes a lot of time, but also like these people charge like 6 figures if you're getting any legit auditor, and like you should get multiple professional audit if you launch a protocol. So you're very easily looking at like $500,000 if you're launching something. And then it turns out like 95% of bugs are like very obvious, silly things. Like, okay, you didn't initialize your upgradable proxy, or you have this reintency thing, or these are like very obvious things that have been made. Many mistakes have been made, and it's like you don't need to be that expert of an auditor to be able to find them. So where I see this coming in is like you have a constant friend that's addressing these 95% of bugs, so that you won't make any really dumb, silly mistakes, and you don't need to pay someone a bunch of money to do that. And then now, when you actually are ready to say, hey, okay, I want to launch my new DeFi protocol, I know for sure, because after I've been developing for this, like it doesn't have these obvious 95% of bugs. So now I can pay people to very targeted look at more nuanced or advanced holes this could possibly have. So again, that speeds up the development loop, saves you a lot of money from paying people unnecessarily who are going to give you simple feedback. So I think it's going to change the dynamic for like what secure, like how you build secure code.
This is probably a good place for us to start to wrap up, but I wanted to give you a chance to talk about, for those who want to get started with Atlas, what's the best way to go about doing that? Also, anything you can share about how the pricing and packaging works at a high level. You don't have to go through like the specifics, but just for folks who are interested to use the product.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the simplest developer tool to use. You just go to our website and you click start building. It's atlaszk.com. You don't even need an account to start writing contracts, but I would recommend one so that you can use these like fancy AI features I showed you, and anything else we roll out in the future. But yeah, for now, it's just a web app. You can literally, it saves everything for you, and you can deploy to any chain from there. We're going to be releasing a desktop app probably in a few months, but right now we're just focused on the web app. Right now it's free to use. We're focused on just getting like a lot of feedback from people, but likely we're going to have some sort of pricing model built on like how much you're using this Copilot feature, or how often are you auditing your contract, something along these lines. Can you rattle off all of the L2s and I think the one L1 is Ethereum, right? But all the L2s that you support through Atlas? Any EVM chain. So any L1 that is EVM, and then any L2 that is EVM. Everything is supported. Even if it's not, so ZK Sync, for example, is actually not EVM. They have like their own thing that they pretend is EVM. And no other tool works for them. So like these top 3 I mentioned for you, Remix, Hardhat, Foundry, does not work for them. But we're working on a partnership with them, and you can deploy to ZK Sync from us directly. So we're definitely the fastest way to deploy to them. But yeah, any EVM chain, it just works out of the box. Yeah, ZK Sync era is growing like bonkers right now. I think the total value locked has gone up to like 580 or 600 million as of a few days ago. So there's just going to be so much demand for developers to build there. And this is hopefully a hack now to getting started quicker. So I want to remind listeners, they can learn more about Atlas by going to atlaszk.com. They can also follow Atlas on Twitter at Atlas_ZK. And then Samee, just thanks so much for joining us. I want to give you the last word. Anything else that you'd like to share before we go for listeners to learn more about Atlas? I mean, the most valuable resource in all of blockchain is developers. So if you're not a developer right now, you should at least be understanding what they're doing. Like the whole concept of the Ethereum is like it's a computer that anyone can run these apps on, and anyone should be able to like audit the code and understand and remix the code, etc. So being a knowledgeable developer and being able to actually, you don't have to be like writing apps all the time, but at least being able to understand what do these contracts do, and maybe at least trying to build some simple protocol or dApp yourself is going to really put you in the most valuable position as we're moving forward, and as like Ethereum and all these chains become more popularized. So I would really just highlight how important developers are to this entire ecosystem, and like we don't have enough right now. So this is the number one problem that we should all be working to solve.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you're a talented founder or developer, please consider reaching out to our team at fourthrevolution.capital. And for future episodes of the Edge podcast, please check out our link tree at edge_pod.